Paris, 1895. The City of Light stands on the edge of a new century, unaware of the magic it's about to create. We are walking through streets where the air still carries the scent of fresh bread and coal smoke, where horse hooves echo against ancient stones, and the modern world is being built, piece by iron piece. The Eiffel Tower rises like an iron dream against the Parisian sky. Many call it an eyesore, a metal monstrosity. But Gustave Eiffel knows something they don't. This tower will become the soul of Paris. We climb higher, past the workshops where men hammer rivets into iron lattices, their breath visible in the winter air. From up here, Paris spreads before us like a living canvas. The Seine cuts through it like a silver ribbon. Now we descend into the heart of the city, where artists gather in smoky cafes and debate the future of beauty itself. Montmartre, the village on the hill where windmills still turn and rent is cheap enough for dreamers. We walk these steep streets where Toulouse-Lautrec might pass us, heading toward the Moulin Rouge with his cane and his sketchbook. Here, in shabby studios, the Impressionists are painting light itself, capturing moments that will outlive empires. Canvas after canvas shows the same scenes we're walking through now. These gardens, these dancers, these fleeting afternoons. In the Café de la Nouvelle Athènes, poets and painters fill every corner, their conversations mingling with tobacco smoke and absinthe. We take a seat by the window, watching the boulevard outside as the gaslights begin to flicker on, one by one. This is the hour when Paris transforms, when the city belongs not to the businessmen, but to the bohemians and the dreamers. The Moulin Rouge opens its doors. Red windmill blades turn above the entrance, promising scandal and spectacle. Inside, the air is thick with perfume and possibility. The can-can dancers kick their legs to the ceiling while society watches, delighted and horrified. Henri de Toulouse-Lautrec sits in his corner, sketching the dancers with quick, knowing strokes. He sees the weariness beneath the rouge. We leave the spectacle behind and walk back into the night, where the real Paris waits in the quiet spaces between the lights. Along the Seine, bouquinistes are closing their stalls, stacking old books and prints that hold memories of revolutions past. On the Pont des Arts, a young couple pauses. She adjusts her hat. He lights a cigarette. They don't know they're living in a golden age. The bookstalls of the left bank overflow with revolutionary pamphlets, poetry collections, and philosophical treatises that will change the world. In the Latin Quarter, students crowd into brasseries, arguing about Nietzsche and Baudelaire over cheap wine and cheaper tobacco. We climb the stairs to a sixth-floor apartment where a writer works by candlelight, trying to capture the sound of rain on Parisian rooftops. Through his window, we see the city spread beneath us, 1,000 stories happening at once, most of them lost to time. Morning comes slowly to Paris. Bakers are already at work before the sun rises, filling the streets with the smell of fresh bread. Flower sellers arrange their bouquets at Les Halles, the great iron pavilions that Zola called the belly of Paris. Vendors call out their prices in working-class accents that have survived for centuries, will survive for centuries more. On the right bank, the grand boulevards are sweeping clean. This is Baron Haussmann's Paris, wide, modern, designed to prevent revolutions. But in the narrow alleys that survived his renovations, the old Paris persists, dark, medieval, mysterious. At the Gare Saint-Lazare, trains arrive from distant provinces, bringing young people who dream of becoming Parisians. They step onto the platform with everything they own, not knowing if Paris will embrace them or break their hearts. In the Jardin du Luxembourg, nursemaids watch children sail toy boats across the fountain, while philosophers debate on distant benches. The light through the leaves is the same light Monet is trying to capture, again and again, as if repetition could make the moment eternal. We're standing in the Palais Garnier, the opera house where crystal chandeliers cast light like diamonds scattered across marble floors. This is where the wealthy come to see and be seen, where courtesans arrange assignations, where fortunes change hands in private boxes. But backstage, in the dancers' quarters, young girls from poor families practice until their feet bleed, chasing impossible dreams. In the Place Pigalle, the night takes on a different character. Here, everything has a price and everyone has a secret. Street musicians play accordions on corners, their melodies floating up to apartments where someone is always arriving or leaving, beginning or ending. At Maxime's, the Belle Époque is at its most decadent. Champagne flows, laughter echoes, and no one speaks of tomorrow.
But tomorrow is coming. In a few short years, everything will change. The lights will go out all over Europe. For now, in this moment, Paris doesn't know what's coming. It only knows how to be beautiful, how to make art, how to live. We walk one last time through these streets, trying to memorize the way the light falls, the sound of hoofbeats, the smell of chestnuts roasting. In a photographer's studio on Boulevard du Temple, glass plates are capturing these faces, these fashions, these fleeting moments. These photographs will survive long after the people in them have turned to dust, ghosts frozen in silver and glass. The Eiffel Tower is nearly complete now. Soon it will open to a world fair that will bring the globe to Paris's doorstep. From its observation deck, visitors will look down on this same city, not knowing they're seeing the last moments of a dying world. But perhaps they sense something. Perhaps in the champagne and the dancing, there's a note of desperation, a need to celebrate while there's still time. The gas lights are flickering now as dawn approaches. Soon, someone will extinguish them one by one, and Paris will wake to another day. But we remain here in 1895, in this moment between darkness and dawn, where the Belle Époque shines brightest just before the light begins to fade.